Burden that I carried for so many years, you're able to lift that from me. And I'm able to let that go. I ask you, Lord, to open the hearts and the minds of your people. We come today, Lord, and I ask you to open each one of these ladies up to receive exactly what you have for them. I ask you, Lord, to use me as your vessel, as your mouthpiece, and let me do this for your glory, God. I thank you for my blessings. I thank you for my joy and my Holy Ghost, God. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for my heritage, and I thank you for it today. In your name, Jesus. I wanted to tell y'all just a little. Can y'all hear me without that? Yeah. Okay. I wanted to tell y'all a little bit of my background. I am a third generation Pentecostal on my mother's side and my father's side. I never knew anything but church my whole life. I grew up in the church. I went to church every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, on Wednesday night. Back in the day, we went to church on Friday night for youth, and Saturday night was singing. So dating was out. Unless you went to church, you didn't get to do that stuff. So I look at my life now and I think about this song that says, when I look back over my life and I think things over, I can truly say I've been blessed. I've got a testimony. And I kind of feel like I have one of those testimonies that just continues to grow and grow and grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. Because from the time I was a young girl, there were things that happened throughout my life that destroyed my spirit. At the age of 9 years old, I was molested by a family friend. And not going to give you details. You want to know the story? Buy the book. But and then I never told anybody, so my mom and dad didn't know. Then when I got in 6th grade, I went to Pace Elementary School. And one day after school, a young boy pulled me aside and physically and sexually abused me. Another student came in who was and pulled him off, and I got up and ran. Didn't tell my mama, didn't tell my daddy, didn't tell my aunts, my uncles, my cousins. I didn't tell anybody. What I did do was, we lived in Pace next to the church, Pace Pentecostal Church in the country. And every morning, my daddy would get me up for school, and I would get dressed, and I would go hide in the church. And when the bus came by, I would wave them on, and they would go. And then the school would call and say, I would answer the phone. Could I speak to Miss Hall? Speaking. Well, Marci's not at school. Yes, she's sick. And I did this for 6 weeks before the school found out that I was, didn't have permission to be at home. And they called my mom at work. She worked at Delta State at the time. They called her, and they figured out something was going on, but I still wouldn't tell exactly what had happened. I went on, and I was a good girl. We went to church. The most I ever did was go to the skating rink on Saturday night and, flirt with boys like all girls do. But I had a good upbringing. I had a good home. I had parents who loved me. I had a good life. And then I went to college. And being the naive person that I was, I didn't realize what the world was really like. I didn't understand that there were bad people out there. Even though I had been through these things in my life, I still had that naive spirit about me of just not thinking what I would do next would be so detrimental to my reputation and my life. And so while I was at college, I had a roommate who was a drug addict and an escort. she would go on dates with men and they would pay her. And so we had a lot of people in and out of our house all the time. And I was introduced to drugs and alcohol at that point. And that became my life for many, many, many years. When I came home for spring break or Easter break that year, I was pregnant. I went to the doctor because I was really, really sick and I'd lost 54 pounds. I'm a big girl, so I was looking good to me. And I went to the emergency room in this little bitty hospital in Morton, Mississippi, and they said, I think you have a tumor. And so they said, the sonogram person isn't there. You have to come back tomorrow. So I went back home with my stepmother, and my stepmother called my mama and said, Marci, the doctor thinks she has a tumor. She's so sick. Of course, my mama was worried out of her mind. But the next day I went and I found out I was 7 months pregnant. And that was really strange. I lived in my house and my daddy went the whole rest of my pregnancy and never spoke to me. And when my oldest son was born, who is now 29 years old, my parents raised him until he was 4. Because as soon as I had him, I went right back to that lifestyle of doing drugs and drinking every day and partying and doing all those things. So my life went from a good Christian home kind of girl to this life of drugs and alcohol. And it was a hard life to get out of. I stayed there for 7 years. I would come home sometimes, and my parents wouldn't understand. I remember one time my mama said, if you can't stay out all night and live here, and you know, you're gonna have to do something else, and I said, okay, you know, I won't do it anymore. And then I went and I got a laundry basket and I put some clothes in it, and I put Jay, who's my son, that time he wasn't even a year old, I put him in the laundry basket, I put clothes on top of him, and I left. And I stayed on 5th Avenue in the laundromat for 2 weeks. And my mama was frantic and sending everybody looking for me, you know. Finally, my oldest sister Debbie did find me, and she brought me home, or she took Jay back home. I refused to go, but all of those skeletons